Hafide Todo Samzu. Thank you for all attending and providing testimony today. I call this public hearing today to order at 2:02 p.m. This public hearing is on resolution number 242-34, relative to requesting that Congresswoman Bordalio and members of Congress seek an alternative source of funding for war reparations due the people of Guam. At this time, I'd like to thank my colleague, Senator Will Castro, for attending today, and my co-sponsors, Senator Will Castro and Senator Talina, for co-sponsoring this resolution. Resolution number 242-34, relative to requesting that Congresswoman Bordalio and members of Congress seek an alternative source of funding for war reparations due the people of Guam. Whereas more than 70 years have passed since the Japanese occupation of Guam during World War II, a 32-month period where Chamorro people suffered greatly as the United States and Japan turned their island home into a battlefield. In the intervening years, as other communities in the Pacific and the United States have been compensated and recognized for their suffering, the Chamorro people of Guam have not. And whereas Guam is an unincorporated territory of the United States of America, wherein the government of the United States of America has full discretion to negotiate all international affairs that affect Guam and its people without consent of the governed. And whereas the United States, administering in its capacity as colonial power, signed the Treaty of Peace with Japan in 1951 on behalf of the Chamorro people who were egregiously affected by the Japanese occupation. Pursuant to Article 14 of the Treaty of Peace with Japan, Japan was released of any obligations of reparations owed to the people of Guam for atrocities and hardships inflicted. And whereas in December 2016, the island received notification that war reparations passed by the U.S. Congress, elation of the news was quickly soured when details of how war reparations would be provided were provided. While the proposed law would compensate the families of those who died in Guam during World War II and those living survivors who experienced various atrocities, Section 30 monies were identified as the funding source. And whereas Section 30 monies are made up of taxes from U.S. federal employees and retirees living on Guam, pursuant to the Organic Act of Guam, they are earmarked specifically to be given to the government of Guam. In essence, under the proposed law for war reparations, compensation for what Chamorro war survivors suffered would come from monies already earmarked for Guam to receive. The use of Section 30 funds rather than a separate funding source turns what a long-awaited resolution to a tragic era of Guam's history into a potential insult, summarily providing that Guam will be paying its own reparations. And whereas this central problem overshadows other disconcerting aspects of war reparations as it currently exists, inclusive but not limited to the vagueness of Section 30 funding thresholds, eligibility of World War II occupation survivors, the lack of compensation for surviving family members of those who have been eligible, an understanding that atrocities committed during the Japanese occupation has caused generational problems for the Chamorro people, the fact that 5% of all war reparations, if being paid to an office of the United States State Department, and that the administering office conducted no outreach to the community. These issues threaten to make what was intended as a solemn process of recognition and healing in an effort to achieve closure into something that cruelly reminds us of our second-class status and to the continued colonization of our island. In this way, despite the passage of war reparations, this issue, the decolonization of Guam and others, remain emblematic of the need to change Guam's political status to one where our concerns and our suffrage, both historical and present, are taken serious. Now before, be it resolved, Imenay 34 na Legislature ng Guam does hereby, on behalf of the people of Guam, request that the Honorable Congresswoman Madeline Z. Bordalio and members of Congress seek an alternate source of funding in the fiscal year 2018 budget for war reparations owed to the Chamorro people of Guam, and be it further resolved that the Speaker and the Chairperson of the Committee on Rules certify and the Legislative Secretary attest to the adoption hereof, and that copies the same be thereafter transmitted to the Honorable Congresswoman Madeline Z. Berdalio and to the Honorable Edward J.B. Calvo Imagalahin Guahan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the primary purpose of this, through multiple congressional delegation meetings and having spoken to and been in contact with members of Congress, to include our own, one thing's abundantly clear, is that members of Congress are not aware of what this is. While we would like to think that they're knowledgeable in affairs that regard our island with regards to its governance, that's just not the reality. When I spoke with on a recent congressional delegation with one of the congresswomen who is within the subcommittee with our own congresswoman, she had no idea what Section 30 money was. She had no idea that war reparations were being paid from this money. And to put into summary what this resolution does, and in paying these war reparations with Section 30 funds, this would be just going back in history and asking the Japanese Americans who were interned in concentration camps by their own government to pay their own war reparations. This would be asking the Jewish and Polish people who suffered under Nazi Germany to pay their own reparation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we should not be the only people in the world and history to be cruelly be made to pay ourselves for our own suffering. The principle alone is enough to make a sane man go mad, I believe. But the purpose of the resolution is to put on the record, to help and make sure that it's transmitted to all members of Congress before the final passing of the 2018 budget, which is slated to need to be passed by December, to provide information as to what's going on and hopefully try to bring some things to light. And if it comes to the point where this is really to assist our Congresswoman in educating her fellow delegates in the House, then so be it. She's one in a voice of over 300. And so I understand the difficulties that she must have in trying to fight on behalf of the people of Guam. And that's why with this resolution, and hopefully with the support of my colleagues, we can get it passed and we can put on the record what it is this means to the people of Guam, what it means to the war survivors and their family members who had to endure the suffering that we did, and what this means to the people of Guam if we're made to pay it ourselves. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to thank one of the co-sponsors, Senator Talina Nelson, for being here, my colleague. And at this time, we have two that are here to testify. Mr. Sedfrey Linsangen to provide oral testimony, and Mr. Jerry Zipartito.
Thank you very much, Senator Esteves, Senator Nelson. Good afternoon, Senator Castro. First of all, I would like to thank you for introducing this resolution. I can empathize with your sentiments, your concerns. But after analyzing everything, I respectfully disagree with this resolution. Well, I would like to quote the famous statement made by Voltaire, Francois Voltaire, in the 1800, published by his biographer, Elizabeth Beatrice Hall. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say. Now, I will say what I feel for this resolution. You're correct. It's like we are being fried in our own oil because the money is coming from Section 30 funds. But if you analyze what is Section 30 funds, it is a federal funds that is controlled by Congress. And Congress can amend anything. That's their authority. That's why, to me, with 75 years in waiting for the survivors and their descendants, it's time for us to sacrifice and honor this Congress decision. Because since the late Congressman Delegate Ben Blas have worked on this, even Congressman Robert Underwood with his Guam War Claims Review Act. Because without that, it won't be, this one will not materialize. The bill is sponsored by our great Congresswoman Bordallo. That was because of that War Claims Review Act enabled her to introduce the Guam War Veterans Loyalty Recognition Act. And if you will recall, in 2002, it was already in the floor in Congress. And they rejected it because Congresswoman Bordallo was proposing $200 million for the war compensation. And then in 2006, she tried again for $126 million. It was disapproved again. Because for those 510 congressmen, they are more concerned on their district funding than our territory. And even though it hurts a little bit, it's time that these people need to get paid. Because some people are already dying, and it will never get approved if you will continue to challenge the decision by the Congress. This is a great accomplishment by all those congressmen and Congresswoman Bordallo. And it's a progress. You know, after so many years, it finally came through. And just like what I said, they have sacrificed their lives. They were tortured, beaten. Now it's time for us to sacrifice. And there's a lot of ways to sacrifice. You just have to re-examine again the general fund allocation. Negotiate with the Tijan lease, and so many other things. And the other reason why I disapprove, because it will only delay more. Because up to now, it's not yet really approved, because you need the consent of the Senate. Because U.S. is a bicameral legislature. And once this resolution passed to the Congress, then the Senate might not approve it or might not even take a look at it, because we are still running, we are still complaining, we are still disputing. And the more it will delay, maybe next year, we never know when it will be in the floor again. And with our relation now to the U.S., do you think whether you become successful on this resolution, do you think the U.S. Congress will approve it? For sure, no. We've been suing U.S. They've been suing us. We lost a lot of cases. You know, just like the Arnold Davis case. Even we are appealing it. In my opinion, we have no chance to win it. You know, because the position of the Attorney General is to contest it up to the Supreme Court. And I applaud her for that, because that's her job, to work for the people. Because that's what the people want. But if you clearly examine it, even though you win the case, in case you think Congress will approve what you want for the plebiscite to be only for the indigenous people only? Because our main problem is the voting percentage. Our voting percentage is very low. How can you influence Congress when the voting percentage is only 40 to 50%? That's not enough for Congress to say, yes, I will grant to you your political status. Right now, there's like how many indigenous people that are registered? Only 5,000 or 11,000? That's why we need to solve that voting percentage first. And then at the same time, even you include all the registered people in Guam, I don't think you can still convince Congress because the voting percentage that are voting are not enough. It's like what I said, 40 to 50% only, even you include all the 50,000 registered voters. But in actuality, the voter turnout is only 27%. Why? Because there are 43,000 people that are U.S. citizens that are not even registered. See, there are 50, like now there's like 48,000 registered voters. And how about those people? They don't even register and vote at all ever since they become U.S. citizens. See, even you include those people that are not indigenous people, it's still not enough to convince Congress because we have a voting ratio problem, voting percentage. See, just like the Chamorro Land Trust. Again, that's the right way to do for the governor, the senator, the attorney general to appeal, to fight the court. But in my opinion, again, we don't have chance to win the case. See? To me, as quoted by King Acto of Egypt, 2500 BC, he gave a shrewd advice to his son. He said, "Son, you need to be diplomatic if you want to gain your point. You need to be diplomatic. It's about diplomacy. It's about working good relation." And regarding this bill that was approved for war reparation, you need to understand that on top of that, it is included a 250 million expenses or military spending bill for the people of Guam, and streamlined process for H-2 workers in anticipation of the military construction project. Once this one is approved by Senate, you can use that argument because right now we have a pending case. They have no reason now to delay the H-2 construction approval because it's incorporated in the bill. It's a law that to streamline the process. And you need to understand this great work by Congresswoman Madeline is the only bill, the stand-alone bill in that federal spending bill. And imagine, she was able to convince those congressmen after 75 years in waiting, after 30 years of trying. You know? Yeah, that's how you attain progress. It's about good relation. It's about diplomacy. In 1800 again, or 1900, George Bernard Shaw quoted, "The reasonable person adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, the progress depends on the unreasonable man." But now it doesn't work anymore because we have laws that govern us, just like Guam, Organic Act is the framework of our government. The territory was ceded to the U.S. in accordance with the provision of the Treaty of Peace with Spain, between Spain and U.S. on December 10, 1898, and at Paris, France, and was proclaimed in April 11, 1899, to be known as Guam and continuously be known as Guam. We have to control our emotions. We have to think of the better picture, you know, just like this Tomorrowland Trust. If we will negotiate with the Justice Department, I'm pretty sure they will give it to you guys, to the indigenous people, and that will help them. You see, the legislature can create so many laws that are illegal. You know, it's not the duty of the Congress to police every law that you will be creating. It's the duty of the citizen. Once a citizen filed a case, then now it's the duty of the judicial branch of government to decide the case. You can create a lot of policy that are unconstitutional, that is not in accordance with the Organic Act. But if someone filed a case, just like this Davis case, just like this Tomorrowland Trust case, then for sure we will lose the case. And to me, the best deal is negotiate, talk to Congress, do the process just like what the Congresswoman did, and the Chamorro people will attain the lands that they need, will attain the right that they deserve. All they have to do is ask. No, the U.S. government will give it to you because they've been colonized before. Interestingly, they were the first nation that was to break out or to stage a revolt against the European empire. And guess who led the revolt? It's the settlers, it's the immigrants, European immigrants, because they were inspired by the Enlightenment ideas. They were in the 1800, 1700, by the age of reason. And who can understand you more but someone like me? Because my country was colonized also 2 times. We were colonized by Spain. We fought against Spaniards to gain independence. Then we were colonized by American. We fought against them too. And we beat them, you know. But they did not recognize our independence. Because in order to gain independence, you need to fight. You need to stage a revolt. But that's the right thing to do by that time, by the indigenous people, because there's not enough men. The island's small, you see. That's why, Mr. Senator, I truly understand how you feel, but I hope you will analyze everything what I have said, because this will really delay the long overdue payment to our descendants and survivors. Yeah. And yeah, because hate is never ended by hate, but by love. Argument, yeah, could be fixed by diplomacy, by trying to understand the other person's point of view. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sitfree. I really appreciate you coming and testifying, and I do appreciate your sentiments and your thoughts. At the end of the day, with the resolution, if it were to pass within the body, getting transmitted, it doesn't actually affect any policy in federal laws or in Congress. really the purpose of the resolution is to send a message and to apply a little history as to what's going on for the sake of preservation. Again, in my experience with talking to members of Congress, they really had no idea what was going on or what any of this meant. And so maybe it is applying a little diplomacy to pull at their heartstrings to try to understand and to empathize with what's going on with the people of Guam with regards to war reparations. If it was as simple as a message with the passing of the War Reparations Act, with no actual financial backing to pay it, it's really always been my thought that this is something we could have done locally if it was going to come out of our own pockets 30 years ago, and been able to pay these war reparations to the families so that they could actually use it, so that the Manunku who suffered through the war, through the hardest times of the war, could have actually enjoyed it and could have actually benefited from these reparations being paid out. And we see every day we lose another one. And with the passage of the Loyalty Act under the administration of the federal government with regards to paying out Section 30 funds, there's a 5% fee that's being taken off the top. So again, there are a lot of things that, again, this is an emotional issue for many. And while I do commend the Congresswoman for her long work at taking the time to try to get this accomplished and the diplomacy she's tried to achieve, at the end of the day, it's a simple fact that we're paying out our own war reparations. And we're losing out at 5% per annum for the federal government to administer this program for the people. So if we could, excuse me, I'm a little under the weather, if we could just take we're going to take a quick recess. Thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and get started again. We have another person signed up to testify, Dr. Michael Bavakwa. Welcome. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Dispensa Puriatra Sauhu. Sorry for being late. I just finished my class at UOG and then rushed right over. And dispensa do lokwe sa field zahunai manentrega matuginai na class internestigo lokwe con tiempo. Usually I like to submit it in written form, but I didn't have time for this bill, so my apologies. So, para esta resolution, si Diyos masih para oportunidad para kwentusi hamzud para apatinay hinasoku para este na asunto, and para guahu hugov sapoti esta resolution, hutungunay na esta asunto para war reparations, you know, taimano na para ta hutsum na magahit, taimano na para ta sota na ta lagnos na ipiniti ginenadzo na tiempo hunggan hutungo na nagof makadadzo lo paraguaho and ayawatan estinatsalan na ni pernapara sa i-kongresa paraguaho mas baba kinu menaulag na giasti mas mega na problema. And so, husupote esti na resolution sa epok na i-Kongreso na debidi fanespia otru na fondo para esti na programa. And so, just to also sort of clarify some of my thoughts on this, the issue of war reparations is a difficult one, and many people would like sort of closure on it, but when dealing with a topic that's as sensitive as the issue of the atrocities that were committed and the lack of sort of an apology, the lack of closure and compensation for the experiences of the Chamorro people, everything comes down to the manner in which you try to close that chapter. And so it can't simply be that sort of money is afforded for it and that will close the issue. In something such as this, because of course there is no calculus, there's no system by which you can really say that because you experience this amount of money will make you feel better. This amount of money will make what happened go away. It doesn't work like that. And because of that, the manner in which the restitution, the manner in which sort of justice is restored, it's essential that it be as sort of immaculate, as moral, as sort of spotless as possible. And so the way in which this form of compensation is set up almost seems to try to close the wound while making the wound larger. And so, because you compensate people by sort of by identifying a funding which was already supposed to go to the island, it almost reinforces the second-class status, saying that you can be compensated, but you will be compensated in a way which matches sort of your place in the United States. And so it's important to keep this in mind, especially as we see the way in which the president and sort of the federal government is treating Puerto Rico right now in terms of reinforcing their second-class status. And we can see in this as well, and the resolution calls on the Congresswoman to find a separate, a new funding source, and she has already acknowledged that she would like to. And it's and we do have to sort of acknowledge the difficulties in dealing with these sorts of issues in a Congress which has a very poor record on dealing with the territories, acknowledging the territories. But at the same time, I feel that this is something which, in a way, causes a lot more problems. And there's the immediate problems in terms of the process is very difficult. There's money set aside for a part of the State Department which is not here on island, and which sort of people have trouble communicating with in order to get answers about what they're supposed to do. I would definitely encourage the Congresswoman's office to be more engaging with the community, because me and some of my friends, such as Victoria Leon Guerrero, we have been spending time working with war survivors on preparing their applications, and really, and a lot of times we do that because people have expressed that when they've called the Congresswoman's office, they're just told to go to a website that will answer all their questions. And so, all in all, this definitely smacks of something where if we're trying to close this chapter to history, then the manner in which it's carried out is essential, or else it doesn't, or else it just makes things worse. And so one thing that I would also like to acknowledge is the using of section of sort of the monies which were already supposed to come to Guam. It also sets a very dangerous precedent in terms of looking into the future, especially if we look at sort of the Congress now, which is Republican dominated, which can be very antagonistic to the territories. We have to worry that in the future, if there's any request for assistance to Guam, the Congress may be inclined to simply use the same money. It may just say, look, this was coming to you anyways, we'll earmark it this way instead. And so part of the problem with our relationship is that the US Congress can do that anyways. They can unilaterally change parts of the Organic Act and change much of our relationship unilaterally. But this is where the issue, of course, of consent comes in, is that whenever the United States has done something unilaterally, there is always the appearance of consent. That's why when they passed the Organic Act, they did have hearings in which Chamorros did get to testify about their thoughts on it. When they were planning to federalize the CNMI, there was a process by which the CNMI got to participate in discussions about what happens next. So the consenting to it is essential because it sets the foundation for later on the federal government to basically say, look, the people of Guam seem to be okay if we use this money. They allowed us to use it before. So why don't we just use it for this? They said they need this, so we'll just reprogram it. We'll just do it like that. And at that point, we can say, no, but we need that for this. And they will say, but look, you didn't seem to mind us using it for that before. So now you say this is really important to you, so we'll just do this now. And it's a very dangerous sort of dance. It's not a fair sort of engagement at all, because one side has all the power, but that side is also looking for any indication of your willingness. And if they have it, then they will seize upon it and they will basically use that to further take advantage of you. And so in the longer terms, I would definitely say that a funding source has to be identified, which is not sort of the Section 38 money, because it does put sort of further Guam territorial federal relations at risk of being this game of every time you ask for something, they say, well, we already set this aside for you, use it. And then it messes with sort of the government of Guam's budget even further. And so, Sidzus Masi Tatlu, I think that one of the most sort of unsettling things about all of this is the way in which this attempt to closure the issue of World War II and the experiences of Imanyanata and Itautauta, how it becomes just another example of our colonial status. How, you know, that sort of the way in which it's set up, sort of the way in which we're treated, it just reinforces it. And so I think that, I think it would be important as much as we can to sort of take a stand and sort of not allow this sort of thing to happen any further. And so I'm happy to take any questions if you have any, but sidus masitatlu para esta oportunidad para be quentusiamzu.
Thank you, Dr. Pavolka. If any of my colleagues have any questions. I do have a statement, though. You brought up a good point, and a previous speaker brought up a good point as well. The Organic Act is, and then just to put it in a different context, the Organic Act is our pseudo-constitution, right? That's how our government is derived. It's basically the framework of how GovGuam is supposed to operate. and it's all we have right now. And to put into light as to what you spoke to about setting a precedent, Section 30 exists within that. And I think what many don't understand is, with regards to war reparations and how that came about, a piece of our Constitution was affected with the stroke of a pen, without any real input, just like that. Something that was set in stone with the signing of the Organic Act, up until now, describing Section 30, what it's for, how it's derived, and that it's to come to Guam and its people. And just like that, it was swooped up. So I do agree with the sentiment that it really does kind of set a precedent to where, instead of looking at that document that kind of derives all of this and the framework of what we have right now in terms of a government as being just changed on a whim. And so, again, I would ask that, we all consider that in the context of the future and with regard to finding an additional source of funding for Section 30 funds or for the war reparations. We do have another person to testify, Mr. Harold Cruz. If you can please come up.
Hopefully, Senator Esteves, thank you for introducing this measure, Senator Castro and Senator Nelson. My name is Harold Cruz, and I come here in support of the resolution petitioning our Honorable Madam Berdalio to find an alternative source of funding to pay war reparations. When news came to Guam about war reparations being paid, one of the most happiest persons was my dad, who's 78 years old. And the first thing he did was he actually called me and said, "Son, how do I apply for this to get war reparations?" My dad was about 4 years old during the war. He was made to walk or even carried by my grandmother from Hagåtña to Menangan Hills, the concentration camp, along with his older sister and 2 younger brothers. So he was so happy when he heard that monies were found to pay for war reparations. And I shared with him that, Dad, monies were not really found. Because the funding that's going to pay for war reparations actually go to the entire community of Guam, and it's not, it's to benefit the entire community. And I think it's the duty of the United States Congress to fund war reparations separately from monies already that's owed to our island. So he wasn't too happy about it. The wheels are in motion to pay Section 30, to pay war reparations. And when that news actually came out, it was probably a happy day for everyone. But it was, I think the move to use Section 30 money was more of a political move by Congresswoman Berdalio. Trying to make people happy, people that are dying. We have many of our ancestors who have passed away who will never ever see this money. So I implore our legislature to continue to put pressure on our Congress, on Congresswoman Berdalio, and further petition the entire U.S. Congress to get help to find an alternative source of solution. We know that there are other people in the Senate, in the U.S. Senate and Congress who have come out to the aid of Guam. It's evident in the recent help that we got from one of the I think it was a senator or congressman from Florida who helped with Agent Orange. Why does it take another congressman or a senator from another jurisdiction, from another state, to do that? I think our congresswoman needs to work harder to find another source of funding. So I support this resolution in its entirety, And we hope that the legislative body in the next legislative session will support it. And let's keep the pressure on Congresswoman Badali to do the right thing. Because by using Section 30 money, I don't think that's the right thing. Thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up to my colleagues if they have any questions or if they have any statements they would like to make. Right, if not, going to go ahead and make the decision to adjourn. The time is now 2:49. Testimony will continue to be received. They may be submitted via email to Senator Esteves at guamlegislature.org or via hand delivery or postal mail to our office at Suite 309, DNA Building, 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Hagåtña, Guam, or to the mailroom of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santo Papa, Hagåtña, Guam. Again, thank you for all that attended and sharing your testimony with us today. And again, the time and the hearing is now adjourned at 2:49 p.m. Sainamasi.